It is 3/26 of 2015. We continue with Robert Jenson's Doctrine of Creation. This time we get into the second moment. We already went through the first moment of the mind of God, the immanent act of creation as the word of the heavens. And now we move to the second moment, which is going to be the Mosaic Amar, which is the spoken word for creation. God creates through the speech act. And so he will add rhythms 7, 8, 9, and 10 to this particular moment. So we had 4 additional rhythms. We had 6 internal rhythms to God the Father within himself. And now he goes out of himself in the speech act. And we have 4 additional rhythms. The first of these, the 7th rhythm, the spoken other reality has an eschatological end. And we have 7 aspects. And it was good of Genesis refers to this eschatological pronouncement of good. The creation command also judges that the command is obeyed. Human creatures are good as the Hebrew tav, or good for some purpose. Obedience equals the answer of serving God's intention. And the creation narrative certifies the universal scope of God's promises. And so Exodus becomes a type of an ontological interpretive event. So within God's intention is the promise that we all are the ends of the world. We are involved in an eschatological, redemptive eschatology. The 8th rhythm, the spoken word creates a history, not a thing. A history that is a world. It is purposive in order to become whole. The 5 events, central events of this created history, the Abraham covenant, the Exodus event, crucifixion, resurrection, and final judgment. Creation does not even begin until the works of the 6 days are already arrived and have taken place. So according to Robert Jenson, creation begins as eschatological history. Well, that means that the 6 days of the works of creation have to be in place already before the eschatology can start as a historical event. Now, creation and redemption are both dramatically united in creation as united dramatic moments. The 9th rhythm is the spoken word creates a creation of beings who maintain themselves. So now we're going to talk about the actual creation of the human being. Human beings are teleological in their being. They're sustained by striving toward God's determinate end. He uses Isaiah 45:18. It says that God did not create creation as any chaos. Instead, it has purposeful order. He formed it in order to be inhabited. And humanity has 3 basic distinctions in the creation narrative. They are created in the image of the divine. They are to have dominion over other creatures. They are personally addressed by the Lord. So image equals counterpart in the Hebrew. We are to represent the Creator to other creatures. The personal address is a commissioning. We are commissioned to join in God's intentionality. And humanity is invited into God's ousia space. Remember Volume 1 of the Tri-Mutual Discourse within the Father, that ousia space. And we're invited into that through our hearing and reply to the spoken word. So we are created for an opened history of address and answer. That's the conclusive note here under this rhythm, that we as human beings are created for this opened creative history of divine address and the creature's answer. The 10th rhythm, we are sustained in this creative speech act through 2 tasks of motive and mandates. He quotes Jonathan Edwards and then modifies him slightly. God's creative eschatology consists of acts of communication and effects of knowledge. Our knowledge is conformity to God's self-knowledge, and this knowledge will continue to increase unto infinity. So we are involved in a historical process of forever moving nearer to an identity with the divine, to an identity with God and His intentionality. So our motive, according to Jenson, is the triune perichoretic or perichoresis of logos, which means the triune inter-embracing activity which takes place in the ousia space of the Father. And that inter-embracing includes making room for another. So there's the opening up within God of making space for the welcoming of His creatures who are joined in His eschatological historical purpose. So that is additionally important to understand. So it's we are involved in this acts of communication and effects of knowledge, and we do move closer to an identity with God, and we will continually be involved in opening ourselves to make room for others, just as the triune mutual space of converse has opened to allow us to enter through praise and service and thanksgiving and prayer. So redemption in the Christ event is the purpose of creation. Remember earlier, creation and redemption are joined together in the creative act. And based on the above, the current fullness of creation, with all of its errors and mistakes and sicknesses and evil and nonconformity to the divine, still must be perceived as an intermediate good. It still must be perceived through the eschatological filter of our spiritual mind and seen as intermediate good. The actual life of the triune God is a drama in actuality. Within the realm of actuality, there's a drama that unfolds eschatologically, but it is a battle between a death and life, and therefore it has contingencies, it has sufferings, it has many questions from creatures about these sufferings and why do we live in this imperfect environment? Why is this good creation not good? Well, we view it eschatologically as a directional eschatological history that unites creation and redemption in every spoken word from the Lord. So it is the acts of communication and the effects of knowledge which define our dialogue. I think it's a great way to put it. It becomes we are sustained. We aren't just initially created, but we are sustained through speech act, through a communication. It's the communicating Word of God that we have to learn how to listen to. Remember, it's a hearing and answer. Well, we have to learn how to hear. That's a big problem we have. We have to learn how to hear, and that's everybody. I had to learn how. Everyone has to learn that. But how do you hear? How do you open yourself and tune your heart and tune your mind to hearing the spiritual in the world that you live in? We have to tune ourselves, tune our hearts, tune our minds, and learn how to hear, and then we'll be able to respond and answer authentically and participate in God's intentionality. And so it's and of course we have as our ontological signposts. We have the in the Old Testament, in the Judaic faith, we have the signpost of the Exodus event. In the New Testament, we have the signpost of Jesus Christ when He announced, "I am the sign." Remember when He was answering under the Jewish critics, He said, "There is no sign given to you other than the sign of Jonah and Nineveh, and a greater than Jonah is with you now." He says, "I am the sign." So the signpost for Christians is the Christ event, but we can look back in the Old Testament within the Judaic faith, and Jenson says that the ontological signpost is Exodus, That is the ontological interpretive signpost to interpret the Genesis creative narrative. So Genesis and Exodus are in a dialogical context, a dialogical and ontological context. So now we're really getting to the meat of things here. We've got a good look at the moment one of the doctrine of creation, which is the internal immanent rhythms that take place within God himself. But then God opens himself and creates by speaking as a speech act. And now Jenson gives us 4 additional rhythms. And of those rhythms, again, it was the rhythm of the spoken other reality has an eschatological end. And then the spoken word creates history, not a thing. The spoken word creates creatures who maintain themselves by striving towards God's determinate end. And then we are sustained through participating in motive and mandates of the Spirit, of the creative Spirit, within that eschatology, by becoming involved in learning how to listen to the act of communication from the divine, and then learning from there to move on to authentically answering that communication. And in that way, and through that dialogue, we gain divine spiritual knowledge, we increase in spirit, we increase in knowing, Sophia and Gnosis, in other words, the knowing of the soul and the knowing of the mind. And that gives us a very brief look at the second moment, but now between the two, and I didn't repeat all the information of one, but between the two, we have really launched into some solid information from Robert Jenson. So that'll wrap us up. That puts us up through page 23 now.